Malo Lele, and welcome everyone to another live digital kava session here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. You have your host here, Tuafale, coming from the entertainment capital of the world, Southern Nevada, Las Vegas. And we're excited for this evening to be able to continue our live digital kava sessions. As always, we do make an effort for at least once a week. Whether we're doing a live, we try to keep at least one live a week on the live digital kava sessions. We continue to release episodes on the Polynesianized podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Patreon, Instagram, X, Twitter, and there are many ways that you can also listen. Let me change the banner here so people can see that you can also listen to the audio. We also upload the video form as well onto Spotify. But if you want to listen while you're driving in the car, we do provide the audio version on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcast, and as I mentioned, Spotify and iHeartRadio. We've also heard from others that we're also available on SoundCloud. We do use a service that just broadcasts the digital version or the audio version of the podcast on multiple platforms, so you can be able to access the content as you wish. We really appreciate the support that continues to come online with likes, shares, subscriptions. Really appreciate that. We really appreciate all of our paying members on YouTube. Those little contributions are very meaningful to us. So if you're, joining us here in the live digital kava session for the first time, or you've seen our content throughout social media, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Even for those who disagree with us, we invite you to share your thoughts, share your opposition. Believe it or not, as much as possible, we do try to engage where we can. Obviously, we get hundreds of thousands of views every week, thousands, tens of thousands of comments. We can't respond to every comment. We can't, get to every little thing. We're a small operation here, and it's we do it because we have a love for the game, right? For the love of the game is why we're here. So really appreciate that. Want to do a shout out there. Also want to give a couple updates. I think I shared this two live digital kava sessions ago, but we haven't done it on our last and most recent live digital kava session before. So before we get too far into the show, want to make sure I share this because we did relaunch and update our website. And so we wanted to let everyone know it's a great way. It's only within the US. We'll try and see what options we can to get into New Zealand and Australia. Obviously, Auckland is a hotbed for our viewers, and we get, great followers in Australia, New Zealand, and the US. We do get some people from Europe, but really appreciate the opportunity to get across and share this. These are just some merch. If you're interested, take a shot at it. I ordered the t-shirt the other day, and the quality was good. We did some small adjustments to the design, and we're pretty happy with the quality and think you'll enjoy it. And that's another way you can contribute and get some cool merchandise, at least from our perspective. We think it's pretty cool stuff. So with that being said, we're going to kind of jump into our first topic of the live digital kava session. And we're going to start with one that's kind of interesting. So we released, maybe we'll start by showing that. Maybe we'll start by showing a couple of videos. We'll start with the first one with the Tawalunga, then we'll get to the tattoo little situation there. And we released a couple videos and got a lot of feedback, interaction online. Want to take a moment here. Hey, Malo Talangi, appreciate it. He says, "Sup, Tua, how's it going?" It's going good, brother or sister. We don't know you here, but really appreciate it with that symbol we always take time to recognize our paying members of the Polynesianized podcast. That's another thing. Just remembering with that. If you want to contribute a digital kava bag through the super chats, you can do so out of just adding to the digital kava bowl. Or if you have a specific question or comment, making sure that you want us to get to it, use the super chat. And if you're a paying member like Ta'alang here, we make a coordinated effort to recognize our paying members. So if you're a paying member, small monthly fee and contribution, and this is one of the benefits, is your comments on live digital kava sessions are highlighted, and we try to get to those as much as we can. So appreciate that. With that being said, there was a video that has been, I think this video, thousands of views, tens of thousands of views, thousands of comments, and wanted to dive into this topic a little bit more, give some clarification. This is from our interaction with Milika Pusiaki, and a video that we cut up from that, and really just want to dive deeper into it, because there's a lot of things that need to be fleshed out in this topic on the Tauolunga and the Tatatau, or the Pea, or Malofia, or whatever it is that it's called. And this reveals layers of information and concepts that I think are really important to understand. Some of it has to do with the relationship of Tonga and Samoa. Very close, goes thousands of years. For all intents and purposes, there wasn't an independent nation of Tonga from an independent nation of Samoa. The history between Tonga and Samoa has been blurred through colonization, and also just the concepts of how different strategies in approaching colonization and integrating a new Christian culture with your traditional culture, and the different strategies that were utilized that really show the difference in the approaches of leadership and the culture between Tonga and Samoa. So we'll start with the video itself, and then we'll get into some other videos. Some of the videos I just in prepping up some, I think from the Offside podcast, they discussed something similar. We're going to respond to that. And also a ABC Australia or New Zealand did a short summary with Milika. We responded that, but we were going to go through those again and kind of talk through some concepts that I think are important to kind of keep in mind as we look at what happened before colonization, before Western contact, during and after, and how this misinterpretation of what's Samoan, what's Tongan, and how things are interrelated, and kind of walk through that and just have some discussion. So we'll jump into it and go from there.
And it's so different from, the Samoan Siva, because they say, they glide. The Tongan dances remain still just to show respect.
Very composed, yes.
Yeah, very composed. And they were not allowed to move their lower part of the body when they perform. They were only, that's why it's called Tauolunga. It's only the upper part. And this comes from the idea of the Tongan Fale. You know the lock, the va'akau that lies across in the on the Fale is called Tauolunga or Taufatunga Motua. The Tauolunga comes from there because the kahoki or those little sticks are tied into it. The idea is to take how we teach our girls to remain pure until their wedding day. So the idea of the Tauolunga is to teach our young maidens to remain pure until their wedding day. So all the values of a girl, that's the beams,
it's the beam. It's the structural beam. Yeah, so, it's the weight-bearing beam.
So, I'm just trying to. So that's why they form a Tongan Tauolunga, is to bring that all the values of a Tongan Tahine and teach her the values by us, by dance choreographers, so that she knows why she wear the puleoto, why the oil is still glowing and flowing, why the brother is the tula fale. And it's so different from the Samoans.
So that's the video. She's kind of talking about the concept of the Tau'olunga, where it comes from, the framework that's in. And you can see a lot of the videos here. The Tongan Tau'olunga was outlawed, true. And then it says here the queen has a video herself, which I think it's mostly Pilo Levu. I think Princess Pilo Levu was the one who's saying that the dance originated from Samoa, and this is where Tonga adopted it from. Okay, and this is
earlier today.
This is where nuances matter. Is the perception that Tonga adopted the Tau'olunga from Ha'amoa correct? And it's like, technically, yes. Okay. But there's a little bit more nuance to it. And from a very kind of like surface level understanding, which I had for many years, that's kind of what I understood until, growing and learning and listening to people, especially like Milika from La Paja and those who kind of understand the nuances of politics and why and how these things came about. And that's something that's really important. I think what people fail to understand, and that's what I'm kind of hoping to kind of open up to those who are listening and those who are watching, open up the dialogue, is to have a different perspective of what was happening. Okay. So Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, parts of Fiji, Tokelau, Eastern Polynesia, from our perspective, was a united civilization. We shared a culture that united us. A lot of these were ruling families that were intermarrying and maintaining those relationships over long distances. And Tongatapu was the capital, specifically 7 different settlements, but the longest settlement was in Mu'a and in La Paja, which, Mu'a, for even many people in Tonga don't fully understand this. When you say Mu'a, you're actually referring to 3 villages, right? Tatamotonga, La Paja, and Talasiu. These 3 villages is what constitutes Mu'a. Now, Tatamotonga is a part of that, of Mu'a. Takolokakala, you have La Paja, is really where a lot of the centralized power was. That's where a lot of the residences were for the Tuitonga and many of those that were close and held power, including those who had specific talents and capabilities that were passed on within their family, like Mirika's ancestry, who were, master composers of music, of dance, and all of those things put together, that was being honed over hundreds to thousands of years. And because Tongatapu and Mu'a / La Paja was the center of the Polynesian Empire, the ideas and a lot of the developments of things that were new and interesting eventually ended up there, right? I mean, there are the best of what the empire offered eventually made its way there, and this has been documented. This is not just by oral history; it was documented by Captain Cook for the Inasi when he was there. He visually was there, observed it. He also, for the oral history, we know there's the Inasi and the Polo Polo, so twice a year, people throughout the empire traveled to Tongatapu to give those tributes twice a year. Now, it is not just an exchange of goods, like I'm saying here. This is an exchange of ideas and of practices. One of those is dance and music. And so there is an integration and a fluidity of ideas, including dance, right? Like, there are dances, ancient dances in Tonga that are very similar and has very similar names. And from all descriptions of what these traditional dances, very similar to the dances in Tahiti, in Hawaii, of the hula. Um, and so there are these dances that were common amongst all of the islands. Maybe some of these ideas originated, you know, in certain areas, but they eventually made their way to the capital. It just makes sense. You look at the capital of any empire or country, many times the best practices, the best ideas flow to the capital. Now, we can have discussions on, was there an empire? Was there not? Does it make sense that the Mu'a and Tongatapu was the center of the empire? We can have all those discussions, and we've had them many times. And honestly, we're waiting for someone who would be willing to come on here and present a different position, right? Present to us what are the other options for a capital of an empire, why you believe so, and so forth. A lot of people online say a lot of things. We've invited a lot of people, academics, influencers, self-proclaimed whatevers, right? We've invited them to come online. Let's have that conversation. They're more than willing to engage through the keyboard, more than willing to kind of, react to some of our content. But and we're going to be friendly. We're not going to. We come on, guys. We live in a civilized world. We're gonna, as we tell little kids, use your words. We're gonna use our words and let the people decide. Right? We're out here presenting our position that we feel has a lot of logic, has a lot of evidence behind it, and we invite others to come. Anyways, we're getting a little far from the topic there, but that invitation is open, right? If you're someone who thinks there's someone online that is willing and able to come online to present a different position, please send them to us. We are more than willing to bring them on and talk through that. Now, coming back to the Taolunga. So, we have thousands of years of dance and music that's been shared throughout the civilization, and it's, a lot of it is brought to La Paja, where people of talent and skill are refining it and building it over hundreds and thousands of years. Then we have Christianity comes in. Christianity comes in and brings in a new perspective, a new approach to understand what human beings are, what relation they have to a new God, which from our perspective, is it a new God or is it a restoration of a belief in a God from before that is revealing themselves again, that was obviously lost? That's another conversation. But they bring in this new religion, this new way of understanding God, and the deliverers of this message don't fully understand, and maybe they're right. Maybe these practices were causing moral challenges. I don't know. All right. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe they were overly aggressive and shouldn't have banned these dances. But the reality is these dances are banned, right? And remember, this is, for all intents and purposes, this is a self-imposed. As much as people try to say, oh, the Europeans came and they banned it. Well, maybe in other areas, but in Tonga, because Tonga maintained its independence and sovereignty, this was a self-imposed ban by Tongan leadership on its people in its culture. So it gets banned. However, there this is an effort to try to assimilate and integrate, right, a new culture. There is still thousands of years of history and of practice and observance of dance and culture, so it doesn't just disappear overnight, right? And like Elon Musk, I just watched a video of Elon Musk. He says, if you're cutting and cutting and cutting and you never have to put something back that you cut, then you know you're not cutting enough, right? You're going to cut as you're trying to improve and adapt and develop something new. As you're cutting waste or what is a distraction, what's not critical, which Tonga was doing as not only part of its conversion to Christianity, but its navigation through colonization, certain things get cut. And it's obvious that some of these things that were cut probably shouldn't have been cut. Prime example, after Tupo the First bans tattooing and so forth in Tonga, he still himself goes and gets a tattoo. Right? He goes to Samoa and he gets the tattoo there. Now, that is a possibility of recognizing, hey, maybe we kind of went too far. As they're all navigating new ground, and you know how difficult it is. It is so difficult and so fragile to navigate colonization. Tonga was the only one to figure it out. Okay, and it's not easy. So we have things like tattoo and tauolunga that are cut. This is also true of those dances. So this is where history, experience, maturity of politics, and understanding how to put back something that was probably cut, that was unfortunately cut, not necessary, but we have to figure out a way to bring it back. And we still have this knowledge of how these dances were done, how they were executed. That knowledge still exists, example, through the families of Milika and other Punake families in La Paja and in Tonga, but La Paja was kind of like a hub. So now you're going to develop, how do we restore our dances, right? And you know what's a smart way to do it? So that you can navigate established law, Christian beliefs, and to mitigate opposition and disruption to stable society. This is how our ancestors framed it. They said, we see Samoa, they have a dance for young women in groups and in single. To make it palatable to not only just the Europeans in Tonga, but the Tongans in Tonga that have completely embraced Christianity and have gotten to the point where they even see some of our traditional practices as heathen, which is unfortunate, but that's some of the dirtiness of trying to navigate colonization and embracing a new religion and so forth. You say, hey guys, we're going to bring the tauolunga from Samoa, and it's Samoan, technically true. It's borrowing the name. And that is going to be the dance that we introduce, right? That's going to be the dance. Now, then you take that and you go to your punakes and you go to the poets, the choreographers who know and understand the traditional dances and what is appropriate and what represents Tongan history and culture. And you say, structure this to express our traditional dances in this new framework of tauolunga that comes from Ha'amoa. And that's how we're going to reintroduce our traditional dance. You see how kind of skillful that is? Can you appreciate the skill? You don't come across this type of smooth or silky navigation of tension, navigation of politics, navigation of religion, navigating even internal tensions, and really introduce something that restores and maintains the cultural and the tradition of the people without rocking the boat, so to speak, or disturbing and making waves. It's actually quite a very, it's a genius way of operating. And that is how Tonga was able to maintain its independence. That is how Tonga was able to navigate colonization. That is how Tonga was able to identify something good in Christianity, something good. And like I said, there is a real possibility in my mind Christianity was not bringing something new. It was reawakening a knowledge and a truth that Polynesians had in their DNA, and especially in Tonga, of a God, of a way of viewing the world that rang true to them, right? And when they did that, they had to navigate which part of our history that is aligned with this new approach and religion that we can restore. At first, we had to cut. Just like if you take over a business and you're trying to turn it around, you got to cut, and you got to say, what is our core business? What is the most important part of our business that we need to maintain? That's what Tonga had to do with many of our practices in our structure. And like I said, in that effort of cutting, there were some things that are inevitable when you're trying to be as efficient as possible. And as Elon Musk says, when you know that you're cutting at the right level is when you have to put things back. The taolunga and the tattoos seem to be something that even within Tupo the first lifetime, he gets his tattoo, he is starting to show through his actions. Maybe that was something that we were overly aggressive on. Then with his granddaughter, who marries into the Tuihata Kalaua clan, she starts reintroducing dances and so forth. And when I say reintroduce, she facilitates the pathway to reintroduce this by writing songs and poetry. And then she turns, like Milika Pusiaki said, she turns to the families that have been doing this for thousands of years and says, express our Tongan culture through the framework that's palatable for Christians, foreigners, Christians who are domestic, but it's also bringing the element of Tongan ancient history and dance. That is what's happening, right? Yet people will jump on and say, oh, that's Samoan. Okay, it's technically right. But if you're technically right, then you're also technically wrong. We're gonna walk through and just gonna talk. Let's go through night. Like I've given that spill. We're gonna walk through some other videos of Milika. She's gonna talk about it a little bit. I also found a video of the Offside podcast that talks about it a little bit. And so we're gonna kind of go through some of those videos. Let's start with the video by ABC that kind of talks about this. And like I mentioned, Milika, we released an episode on the podcast that we had an interview with her. It was great. Go check that out. And we're going to kind of react to some of these and try to minimize stopping it as much, but 8 minutes, maybe we'll stop it once or twice, or if there's a commercial. But yeah, Let's go through it.
This is the Tau Olunga, one of Tonga's most recognisable dances, usually performed at events by young women either solo or in a large group. And while Tongans are proud of their cultural heritage, it's been pointed out.
This Tau Olunga dance of Tonga was adopted from Samoa many centuries ago.
In the past, scholars have highlighted the Tau Olunga's Samoan origins, and it's a narrative that's often repeated today.
I always disagree with people when they say we stole it from Samoa. No, we have our own.
Milika Pusiaki Fifita is the founder of the Fe'unukola Global Academy that teaches Tongan performing arts. Hailing from the village of Lapaha, Milika comes from a famous line of punake, or master performing artists.
So Lapaha is the ancient capital of Tonga. And before the Christianity hit our shores, the Lapaha people were known as the choreographers, the composers to the Tui Tonga. And when Christianity hit our shores, they banned some of the ancient dances.
She's conducted extensive research into Tongan dance forms. Milika says the Tau Olunga has a more complex origin than merely copying Samoa. Milika says before Tau Olunga, there was Daula, a dance performed by the daughter of the highest village chief. She says that when Christian missionaries first arrived in Tonga, they deemed the Daula dance too suggestive.
Because the way that the Daula girl moved, because Daula was like a very seductive dance, the missionaries thought it's against their teaching and their beliefs.
The ban was serious enough that missionaries imposed fines on people who performed these dances. But
And that's where I'm saying, understood that the missionaries had influence, but the missionaries do not have political nor policing power, right? They convinced the Tongan leadership this is something that needed to be cut. But just like when someone takes over a business, you know, you have board of directors, they're telling people what to cut, how to cut, and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's the CEO and the team that needs to make the final decisions.
Milika says that while Tongans embraced Christianity, they were reluctant to part with their dancing. To accommodate the ban, they reworked Daula, combining Christian and Tongan values to uphold the dignity of young Tongan women. Working with Milika's ancestors, Queen Salote further solidified the dance by restricting whole-body movement.
Tau Olunga in Samoa is Tau Alunga, and it's beautiful, but they glide. They call it se'e. You know, they move to the beat of the rhythm of the song. Whereas our Tau Olunga, we are standing still. We barely move around. It's mainly the upper part that we use for delivering our actions. So I think that's the difference you've seen from the ancient one and the current one.
Pause that right here. Malo Shogun, paid member of the Polynesianized podcast on YouTube, so really appreciate it. Shogun says, Tongan Tawalunga is way different from Samoa Tawalunga. The Tongan Tawalunga is graceful as opposed to the Samoan flamboyant. Also note that the actions to the Tongan one is matched to lyrics. And the lyrics, the hand movements are expressing or tied to the lyrics. I think that's what Shogun's trying to say there is, you know, if it's a dove, the hands will represent a dove and so forth. If it's, you know, of love or whatever, it may go to the chest. So yeah, really, really important there. And that's one of the restrictions on, and I think Milika talks about a little bit, you know, there are multiple variations of the Tauolunga even within Tonga. The most restrictive, and one could say managed, is from La Paja for the royal families, where there are certain actions that are discouraged or removed, tapping of feet, you know, certain facial gestures are kind of like no-nos. It's keeping a very calm, forward-facing display of the dance. So Malo Shogun, appreciate it.
All art absorbs and reflects the world around it. Pacific dance is no different.
Little girls, okay, everyone sitting down. We've always been navigating, we've always been traveling, and we've always been sharing dances, and all these different dances that we have been a way of us trading knowledge, trading culture with our neighboring Pacific Islands.
100% agree with
Milika's cousin
what she's
Cecilia
saying.
Pusiaki is also a renowned teacher and performer of Tongan arts in Aotearoa. She says Tau'olunga continues to evolve even today because each village and each instructor brings their own experience to the table.
You will go back to Te Takamotonga, you will see the Ta'alunga of Te Takamotonga. You will go to Ha'apai, you will see their way of Ta'alunga. You will go to...
By the way, I'm pretty biased. Takamotonga probably has the best Tau'olunga. The people from there, it's the most entertaining. I would also say for the Lakalaka, La Paha, and Takamotonga are my favorites. I don't know if I'm just biased, but I am much more entertained watching them execute these dances than others. But 100%.
It's not to say that one is better than the other or this is right or wrong, but it's from the people that we learn from. If we have Lakapunake and Tonga, they taught students. Those students now migrate overseas to Tonga, to America, to Australia, to New Zealand. Those students are now, lotolahi, they're courageous to venture out and start teaching.
But as Tau'olunga evolves, so too do other Tongan dance forms. Nowadays, there are many practitioners that
So I'm going to pause it there. I think that gets the concept there. Don't want to watch the whole video, but a lot of things that they're expressing, Milika and her cousin here, they're talking about the trading. They're talking about how the ancient Tongan tradition of dance is kind of like merged together with this new Christian identity. And it's a very, very fine line to try and manage, right? Because you're trying to maintain what's important from the past, what is most critical, removing all unnecessary pieces, and trying to see which pieces of this new identity and this new culture that we have embraced and trying to merge them together, all the while trying to make sure that sovereignty is maintained. This is no simple act. This is something that is very complicated. It's very, very sophisticated, and it's a difficult thing to do. This is why Tonga surviving colonization, it's really kind of silly for me to hear people. It's like, oh, they just capitulated to the missionaries. Do you know that every other island did that? All the other islands converted to Christianity. They still got colonized, right? So you can't just say, oh, the Tongans, they just capitulated. They just bowed down. Okay, guys, you guys did the same thing. And if you did something different, like all-out war, the European technology outmatched you, right? So once again, we have to be a little bit more thoughtful. We have to think about these things and understanding how these things survived, how they were restored, how they were combined with the new culture. This is what gives us an understanding of what our people, our culture, our history was really like, and the level of knowledge that the Polynesian civilization had achieved, right? Like, once again, the Ula sounds very similar to the Hula and the Tahitian, Kamure, and all those kinds of things. Oddly similar. Very, very, enticing, to say the least. Those things are managed. This is, like I said, these are ideas, these are practices. that were shared amongst all of us. And it just happened that a lot of those ideas and practices initiated and started eventually made its way to Tonga. So with that being said, I happened to come across this video. This was not initially in my plan for the show today, but I haven't watched it through, or if I did, I forgot, but this was new and I came across it, wanted to kind of see, this is what happens when you have a surface level understanding and interpretation. And I'm not blaming them. They don't know what they don't know. I didn't know, right? Until you understand and you get exposed to what's happening behind the scenes and the how and the why things are the way they are. It changes your perspective. So I'm not trying to say, oh, the offside guys, blah, blah, blah. No, they're probably doing the best with what they got. And we're trying to bring new ideas to the table and just give our viewers and our listeners a different perspective, something else to consider than the narrative that's out there. Okay. Let's bring this to the stage. And let me see. All right, let's.
This is the Tau Olunga, one of Tonga's most recognisable dances, usually performed at events by young women either solo or in a large group. And while Tongans are proud of their cultural heritage, it's been pointed out.
This Tauolunga dance of Tonga was adopted from Samoa many centuries ago.
In the
I'll leave it there, but again, you can hop on ABC News Australia and just search on YouTube, where does Tonga's most recognizable dance really come from? You watched the docu, what's your thoughts?
Yep. I don't think there was anything bad about it. It was just acknowledging where it was from. But in saying that, like, Tongans have made it their own. You know, there's heaps of different variations now. I think Queen Salote made some changes to it. What do you call it? Like, she restricted the movement in the Tongan one. So,
and once again, it's not Queen Salote, it's the Punakes that were given this responsibility to say, how do we express our ancient dance and culture through this new framework, right? Just like Tonga expresses its traditional government, political, and even social and religious perspective through the Tongan constitution, right? How do you reflect the ancient Tu'i structures of land ownership in a new constitution that allows for private property for a commoner that didn't exist before? How do you express that? And that's how you get the Tongan laws on land. Tongan laws on land are probably one of the most sophisticated law and most, red tape laws on land ownership than any other place on earth. And it's by design, and it's because it is an adaptation of ancient law land ownership practices implementing Western and new ideas of private property for the individual, while maintaining the kingly and nobility control or involvement and ownership of land. It's a merging of those. That's another great example of a merging of Western concepts with traditional ancient concepts that have been in existence and provided stability in Tonga for thousands of years.
If you watch the documentary, she was talking about it, how the Tongan one tends not to glide across.
It's very subtle way.
Yeah,
very
it's
subtle.
very still as well. So,
Yep.
In Samoa, the Samoa one we glide, and they call it se. And
imagine being able to build an app.
We'll pause that right there. And so, we've watched the video. I don't know if this sound is going to come through. I want to make sure it doesn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to remove it. That's what I'm talking about. There's nothing wrong per se with his interpretation. That is the surface level interpretation that one can take, and that's fair, right? That's the intent. The intent of what the Tongans did was exactly to achieve what was achieved there. It was like, hey, yeah, it's Samoan. It was borrowed from there, and that's the narrative, right? That's the propaganda you want out there, so that you don't get the opposition, not just from the foreigners in Tonga, but also the Tongans within Tonga who have fully embraced Christianity and this concept that what we cut in the past, everything that was cut in the past must have been evil, must have been wrong, and therefore it would be less palatable for them to say, oh yeah, we're restoring our traditional dances that we've been telling you for how long is evil and bad and blah, blah, blah. You see how much of a challenge that is, rather than saying, hey guys, this new Samoan, the Samoan Tawalunga, we're gonna establish that we're not quote unquote resurrecting our banned dances. We are bringing the Samoan Taolunga, and we're expressing ourselves through that, not knowing that is the pathway of which you restore your traditional dances.
And like you maintain the head height, so it just glides. So but a lot of our Pacific history is like that. A lot of it's shared. In some places 100%. It's lost. And so I don't think it's a flex to try and say, yeah, it's from where we are. Because sometimes it's only traced back to, like, say, Samoa, for example, like tattooing, simply because it survived in Samoa. You know what I mean? And especially in the past, where Samoa and Tonga are not different. It's just the same people, same culture. We never viewed each other as different. So, it's not like Samoans are going to try and say, this is from us. No, it's not about that.
And I 100% agree with what he's saying there, right? That we were one people, we were one civilization, we were one, like, political, social, religious structure, with some variations in between, because there's different environments, different geography, different preferences, different weather that you have to make certain adaptations. But at its core, it's the same thing. Like you said, the tattooing, the dance, a lot of we're interrelated. There's Tongans living in Samoa, and Samoans living in Tonga. Remember, there was no American Samoa and Western Samoa. Now it's just Samoa as independent nations with borders. That didn't exist. So I agree 100% with what he's saying.
We've talked about this on the podcast so much, but about colonization and the effects of it on our culture. And one of the points that were brought up by I don't have the wonderful lady's name, the Tongan teacher, who trains this craft over in Tonga, and I think Australia as well. But she talked about how a lot of this was restricted, and most parts of it were taken away due to Christian missionaries. And just it's becomes more interesting for me when it's coming from elders in our community.
Right.
They recognize it, because I think sometimes our people are very proud and very stubborn, and we tend to kind of discard anything to do with the faith of our people. And so I guess your thoughts on this, because you've touched points on tattoo being taken away from us, our language being taken away from us, and then even dance, where Tongans, it kind of feels like they've had to rebuild it.
Yes. And a lot of the dance all around the Pacific was banned, banned in the Leeward Island codes, banned in the Blue codes in the Cook Islands. Dancing was banned everywhere. The Po Siva in Samoa, the night dancing was banned. and it hasn't even come back. There's no more night dancing.
What's the night dancing?
Dancing at night.
Wait, so just dancing, like
Yeah.
it wasn't a specific dance?
A siva, and like what
That's probably very similar to the ula, right? It was probably the night dance because it was very suggestive, maybe. I don't know.
she said. She brought up the ula. The
Mm.
ula
Oh, there we
was
go.
really sexually suggestive. Well, that's how the missionaries perceived it.
Yeah.
The swaying of the hips, the ula in Tonga, which is the hula, right?
Yeah.
Which is the hula in Hawaii.
Right. So did Samoa and Tonga have a hula?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and that's what she's talking about. For example, the ula is what she talks about. So, there was like a compromise with a lot of things. So things were either banned or okay, you can do this, but
Change
not
it.
this. Yeah, or change it a little bit.
Mm.
Okay, so like for example, there's ones like flowers. Flowers were banned in the Cook Islands, but if you wore the flowers to a church service, it's all right, but you're not allowed to wear it. So that's what I mean by compromise. Like this siva is banned unless you do it at church or whatever. It's part of a Christian celebration, then it'll be okay.
Right.
So yeah, it's just so many things were banned. And the ula, for example, so Balangi comes over and finds things sexually suggestive.
Mm.
You know, so it's banned because of how they view things. And so, like you said, this was like trying to rebuild it, trying to enable it to survive. So they have to change it a bit, otherwise they'll completely lose it. You know, so it makes you wonder about the dances that were banned. You know,
There must be so many.
absolutely, and a lot of dance is not like nowadays. Dances is just
Yeah.
right. There's no meaning, but dances.
Can you do that again for so we can clip it?
But it'll look good. Clip this. It'll look good if there was 4 other people doing it. So clip
Yeah.
4 of me and do it. I bet it'll look good. But like the old dances were recipes. The old dances,
Recipes?
yeah. So the old dances were cultural practices. So there were dances on how to weave.
Oh yeah.
There were dances on how to build sails. So you do all this stuff.
That's interesting because that speaks to our oral tradition.
Right.
So rather than write it down, it's we're gonna move,
Yes.
and this is the
We're gonna
recipes.
move and sing it. And that's
Interesting.
why they always look for children. This was our most important child who was musical.
Right.
Okay, because they can keep rhythm, means you can keep song. When you can keep song, you can keep history, you can keep recipes, you can keep cultural practices.
Mm.
And so the old music and
Interesting, never heard
dances
that.
had information in it, right? So when you ban that music and you ban that dance, you ban that information about culture. So
Yeah.
surfing songs were banned, for example, and songs included which waves to catch, how to build the surfboard. They were all in songs. And we all know, like, we can remember songs that we sung like 20 years ago,
Mm.
right? And just out of it being music. So
That's so interesting.
yeah,
Never
so
thought about it that
yeah,
way.
so a dance back then wasn't just random movements that we did together. Everything had a meaning. So
It was education.
it was education. You know,
It's
this
storytelling.
storytelling,
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that, the history books, the ngafa.
Yeah.
You know, your ancestors was a song, all right, and you know, and you remember that, you chant that, and all of that. Dances were the same. You know how to move, what plants to pick, like how to pick it. You know,
Yeah.
wave currents. This is the wind, and this is the wave current. Like it was all information. So that's why they were banned. It wasn't banned because they were just random movements.
So our people were like original hit makers.
Bro, like it was more than that, eh? It
Yeah,
wasn't just
yeah.
a hit.
No,
Like,
because they made it
It had
catchy
to
enough.
hit and hit. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the best music, though.
Yeah, it's the best music, and kids can latch onto it
Yep.
so easy, man. Music is so important to pass down information from generation to generation because
Mm.
kids can remember music for the rest of their life. Like once they remember when they're like 3 or 4, they'll never forget that tune.
Yeah.
And then like later on, the lyrics click. You know, oh shit, it was talking about that. So it's this coconut because in the song it says rah, 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 you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even now they take the song of Taiman Tila Whainga and they try and translate the song as to where is the tattooing from. You know what I mean? Because that song had information about Taiman Tila Whainga. Oh, they mentioned Fiti in the song. It must be Fiji, but it's actually Fiti. But see, in that one song itself, you know, the information, every song had information, every dance had information. So if you want to destroy the culture, destroy the songs, because the songs are these things that hold all the information.
Yeah.
And so they banned it.
And honestly, I don't know if the missionaries banned it because they thought, oh, we got to destroy this knowledge that they have. They may have sincerely thought it was demonic, right? It's just misinformed. Sometimes you think you're doing a good thing and you end up just messing it up for everybody.
And then some things survived, right? And then they also had to change things in order to be allowed. For example, the tattoo, the Samoan tattoo, they say it's for the chiefs, right? But when the colonizers came, it wasn't for chiefs, it was for everybody. So they compromised. Okay, let's not ban it. Let's say only the chiefs get it.
See, and that's something interesting, because when we, and I don't know, maybe it's different levels of chiefs or not, but tattoos were not for everyone. It was, like I said, the first contact, multiple first contact accounts with Samoa, the highest chiefs never had tattoos on them. And they even explain why, right? Because they're achy. They were told that they were achy, and therefore their blood was sacred, and they could not be tattooed, because part of tattooing, you spill blood, and that was a taboo, right? It was sacred, and that's what made them high rank. And they would notice someone getting on was of high rank if they had no tattoos on them. So in a sense, was it for everyone? Yes. Maybe that's how Samoa kind of justified it, and they moved it, was to say that for the chiefs, but that would be changing tradition to some extent. I don't know the details of Samoan structure for their chiefs, but for a real high chief, getting a tattoo was forbidden, even in Samoa, from the firsthand accounts.
So, it's not just our people who have had to survive, it's our culture that's had to survive. And our people have been able to sort of like, just change it a little bit just to get past these fucking palangis who want everything banned. And sometimes they successfully ban everything in Tonga, for example, like the tattoo, but it survives somewhere else in Samoa.
And I think that's a great segue here, because we're going to have a conversation about, tattooing as well, right? And let's Malo Shogun, paying member of the Polynesianized podcast. He says, God forbid the Tongans claim Tatata, which is likely to have originated from Tonga. These people will clutch at their pearls if we claim it. And that's what I think is hilarious, right? Somehow, if Samoa claims it, it's okay. But if Tonga or someone else were to claim it, then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, you are so disrespectful. And I was like, am I being disrespectful, or am I asking questions, legitimate questions? When the oldest tattoo kit comes from Tonga, when many Europeans document Tongans not just having tattoos, they had variety of tattoos, but also pe'a tattoos as well. Pe'a-like, right? It's slightly different, but very similar. And if we say that, then that's a problem. So appreciate that, Shogun. That's something that we see and find interesting as well, is that kind of like inconsistencies is what I'll call it. And so what I want to do next is I'm going to go here and I'm going to try and find this video on the next one, because the other video that we've gotten a lot of pushback on, I just think it's hilarious, is a video that we put on for tattoos and how people have reacted online, kind of like what Shogun says, of if we bring up evidence or so forth that the tattoo, the pe'a similar one, may have existed in Tonga, and that, it's a fair question to ask, did it really originate from Ha'amoa? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I can tell you this, it isn't singular to Ha'amoa. This is something that was practiced throughout Polynesia, and at we know for sure Tonga practiced it, and people get frustrated about it. They kind of like freak out. So I'm gonna bring up the video and then just kind of react to it a little bit. So this is from one of our episodes. Once again, tens of thousands of comments, a lot of them negative, which we appreciate anyway, because that's still a positive interaction for us. But anyways, let's watch what this video is saying.
They say that Tahitians are saying that's Samoan tattoos, but it's not. And here by Erville, the French guy,
Tongan.
it's Tongan.
Once again, there's a little prime example, right, of what we're talking about. Tahitian saying it's Samoan, Samoan saying it's Samoan, but when you go back to the data, it says they're Tongan, right? This is the thing. But the narrative that goes out into the universe through colonization and through the academia is, oh, it's Samoan or so forth.
They say that the Tahitians are saying that's Samoan tattoos, but it's
So this is the funny thing, right? We get all this pushback of why would you trust the Westerners? What are we trusting besides they saw the tattoos in Tonga, right? And they drew it. And they're trying to understand what they see. They're not saying, oh, that's Samoan or whatever. They're just saying, saw this tattoo in Tonga. And I've seen it on multiple people and they document it. Right. And then what's happening here, and I'll try and get it to the part of the video where they're showing the tattoos. So they're pointing at that tattoo right here, right? The French guy documents, and it's a better looking tattoo. And he's saying, once again, because the narrative's out there that anything that looks like a pe'a is Samoan. It's only Samoan, that's where it's from, that's where its origin. There's no difference. Everything gets accumulated there. And on a part of it, like I mentioned, a part of it is because Tonga is maintaining its sovereignty. It's trying to survive. So a natural part of surviving your sovereignty is you get isolated in your own little world. When you get colonized, not only do you have access to go overseas, but there's more opportunities for studies to happen. There's more opportunities for you to get your version of your story out. And Tonga doesn't get that. And it's a fair trade. If I were to make the trade, keep your sovereignty versus get your story out to the world, I'd say keep your sovereignty, because eventually, like we are now, technology will facilitate and opportunities will come for global movement of information at a higher rate than ever before, and Tonga will eventually be able to tell its story. So this is what he's talking about, right? And my favorite is people, especially those who are negative, trying to jump to conclusions. They say, oh, this poor idiot over here who's saying it's because saying it's Tongan because a French guy, and they say, come talk to me when a Samoan Tufunga says it, right? And this is a Samoan Tufunga right here who's saying that's a Tongan tattoo. And he says in this document, this short clip of the documentary, I am not doing something new. I am only restoring what was already Tongan. Right? That is what he's doing. That is what he's offering. And apparently he's one of the, I can't remember the gentleman's name, because this one person who names it, unless he's blah, 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 whatever his name is, one of the most respected Tufungas, then I don't care, because we said, hey, he's a Samoan Tufunga. Unless he's this, and it was the exact last name that same family, the well-recognized Tufunga. Right? But once again, the narrative and understanding the history, that we are more interconnected than people understand and are willing to accept. And to open your eyes and your mind to understand there was way more travel, way more exchange of ideas happening in the past than we think. And this idea of a independent Samoa, a independent Fiji, especially on the eastern and northern sides of Fiji and the rest of Polynesia, that didn't exist. We were a unified people under the Tu'itonga, right? And many of the best, if not all, the best ideas, the best practices were consolidated into the capital. And that is what allowed Tonga to maintain its sovereignty, right? And so that is what we're trying to kind of express here in the ideas and in the concepts. So that is, I think, is what's going to close out that portion of what we're going to discuss. We're going to turn our attention to a couple other things here. Is first, we're going to talk about New Zealand rugby, some of the news that's going on with the Moana Pacifica. Unfortunately, the Moana Pacifica is going to be phased out in the beginning of next year. Malo, Mel, really appreciate it. We always recognize Mel as one of our very first supporters from the very beginning. Really appreciate it. She says, Malo ni tua, Malo ni Mel, appreciate the support. So this has been a discussion that we've had a few times. Is New Zealand rugby has some structural issues, right? Well, number one, I don't know if New Zealand rugby understands their core problem. Once I understood, and because I could never understand why Super Rugby does not adapt, why Super Rugby is not as profitable as it could be. It has that potential. Why Super Rugby in New Zealand has a hard time providing a better product, even to a rugby nation. I never really understood that. But once I learned that all these franchises in New Zealand rugby, 51% has to be owned by New Zealand Rugby Union. Then they said, well, there's your problem. What's your motivation to produce a better product? What's your motivation to put more capital, more skin in the game, when basically you have an organization like New Zealand Rugby Union who has the final say on many things and control, but doesn't bring money to the table? That is I don't care how much money there's out there, that is a flawed business model. And that explains to me why New Zealand rugby can't even fill out their own stadiums, right? This is why the New Zealand Warriors in Rugby League provides a better experience, has a much stronger and dedicated core group of fans than a lot of these clubs in Super Rugby. They have a dominant past and history, but they do not produce a high quality product. Maybe they do, because they just have so much raw talent, especially because of the Polynesian talent pool that they have. But just the product and experience for the average consumer, it's pretty poor, right? And it's because the way they're structured, that there isn't enough money in the world to solve that problem. So there's a structural issue there. Real quick, Shogun says, in time, Samoans will eventually come to realize that we too have our own history, and it's like they're triggered that we get a chance to tell ours. I agreed. And a part of it is, hey, they have their perspectives and what they believe. Hey, that's why we have the live digital kava session, so the best ideas can compete. And once again, we are more than willing to host someone with a different perspective to bring ideas and concepts that are different than ours. You know, we don't even have to debate it per se. We can just have a conversation, get that information out, and let the viewers view and think and make their own decisions of what they think is the truth. All right. So with that being said, so we have the Pacifica Rugby, and you know, for a while they were all like, "Oh my gosh, New Zealand rugby is so awesome. They're investing in Pacifica Rugby." And I'm like, well, number one, New Zealand is Pacifica, and I just never understood that naming convention. It's kind of annoying. You know, it's just like the Islanders when they call the Islanders, and I was like, dude, New Zealand is a freaking island in the Pacific in Polynesia. Even some New Zealanders are like, oh, you know, the difference between Kiwis or Maori and Polynesians. And I'm like, dude. Anyways, won't go down that rabbit hole, but that's a little annoying. So with that being said, I never was a fan or supported the idea. Oh, New Zealand Rugby Union is so awesome. They're investing. I was like, dude, they are only doing that out of necessity, right? Because South Africa left, and that was really who was generating cash because of the South African market and so forth, keeping Super Rugby afloat. Then when South Africa left, Super Rugby was desperate. It was out of necessity that they reached out to the quote unquote Pacifica teams. So Fiji's done a phenomenal job. You know, Fiji has the advantage of a larger population, larger economic economy, right? So it generates a more cash and opportunity there. Tonga and Samoa are not quite there purely from a financial perspective. I don't think that they have the infrastructure nor the cash to facilitate an independent team. Maybe as a minor owner or contributor, maybe that's a possibility. Really, it'll have to be the multimillionaires of Polynesians, of Tongans and Samoan, especially from the NFL, guys like that have a lot more cash that could fund this. But once again, comes down to that terrible structure that they have. I don't recommend a single person. I don't recommend that a single person, no matter how much money you have, don't buy a Super Rugby team. As painful as that sounds, I'm just telling you, Super Rugby can't, even within a rugby loving nation, they cannot be profitable. Okay? Let me just repeat that. New Zealand is a rugby nation, and Super Rugby has a hard time making money and being profitable. That's how bad it is. That's when you know you have a structure. Remember, we were talking about and previously of like when you're trying to adapt, you're trying to change, you got to try and cut the stuff that's bad, cut the stuff that's not good, so you can be efficient, provide the best product, bang for your buck as possible. New Zealand Rugby can't even do that or Super Rugby can't even do that because their biggest problem controls all the franchises. And they want people to bring in capital, pour in cash, like they're some unicorn startup, and have no say or no control over the franchise. Okay. Anyways, let's watch a video here real quick. I don't know, maybe it's an 18-minute video. I don't know. We'll watch the whole thing. But let's let's listen to it. We'll see how far it goes. It's probably painful. I mean, it's New Zealand rugby unions, like it's their what you call their CFO. It's number one. I don't know why the CFO. He's the bean counter. Why is he the spokesman? I don't know, but we'll give it a shot. Let's give a play here.
Just to give a bit of background for our decision, which we've announced today, as we all know, Moana Pacifica has been in a distressed state for quite a number of months. The team was up for sale during the back end of last year and went through a sale process. Unfortunately, that process fell through around April this year when we were notified of that process failing. And then we had to step in along with some other parties to help support that team to get through the end of the season. So I thought...
See, once again, you have New Zealand Rugby Union making these business decisions because why? They own these teams, right? They own 51%, controlling percentage over these things. So, yeah.
I've always been with the players and the fans to make sure this team can stand up as long as possible. Throughout that process, then we kicked off a proposal process to get expressions of interest for parties to have a proposal to take forward the team into 2027 with an initial deadline of the 15th of May. However, unfortunately, through that process, there's been a number of parties that were part of that. And we set some really...
I don't know about you guys. His body language to me, like he's covering up something. Doesn't seem confident. Maybe that's just too much of the American in me. And his body language, he's fidgeting. It just kind of tells me it's like he's just going through talking points. Something's going on in the background, which I wouldn't be surprised. Like they just didn't want the Moana Pacifica team. There's a lot of bad press sometimes, or at least what I've seen. Moana Pacifica team getting stuck places, didn't even get hotels for them. You're right. And it's like, and these are the guys that are in charge. This is the controlling partner here. I don't know if they really wanted the Pacifica. They liked Fiji because Fiji's probably is more economics behind that. Right. But they want the, we're invested and we think the Pacifica is important. But then they make these kinds of decisions, then tells me, and just his body language tells me there's a high probability that they really didn't want anyone to save Pacifica, Moana Pacifica, because if there's a will, there's a way, right?
Strict criteria. First criteria really is committed capital to establish the team.
Of course.
And to ensure that team could last a key broadcast cycle for the next 4 years. The other key part to that was a viable and sustainable business plan, which was a key component to enable the team to stand up a competitive team as part of the competition.
And again, you see how kind of ridiculous this is? We're hearing from New Zealand Rugby Union, who has a hard time being profitable in New Zealand. They're making decisions on how much capital they think and what a viable business plan is. You see how kind of like ridiculous this is? And, we see all these All Blacks in the background. They have the most valuable franchise probably in rugby. And they can't even hold on to their primary sponsors. Right? Just think about that. We have the All Blacks, the most recognized franchise rugby team in the world, and they can't even hold on to their main sponsors, right? They were having issues. They were like, oh man, we're going to go into bankruptcy because we don't have this. And then you have the New Zealand government coming to, save them. And this guy has the audacity to say, yeah, we didn't like the amount of cash that was being brought. And, we reanalyzed the business plan. It's like, dude, you're the last person that should be making a decision on business plan. Let me give you a suggestion. What's his name? Does he have a name? No, it doesn't have a name. Mr. CFO of New Zealand Rugby Union. Go and hire a third-party firm, preferably from the United States, to come and do an analysis on the business structure of Super Rugby and New Zealand Rugby Union and give you an understanding of what you need to do to optimize the huge resource of the All Blacks and the huge resource of Super Rugby that has so much potential that you guys are dragging in the dirt. Right? This guy, like this guy, I don't know.
Survive through to a minimum 4-year period and, in essence, perpetuity as part of our license for Super Rugby. Through that process, there are a number of bids, which we're really excited about the level of interest in the competition and parties that are interested in acquiring the license. However, it really came down to a key criteria of that committed capital and a time frame to establish that capital to stand up a team for next year.
Look at that. You say, oh man, there's a lot of interest, but nobody's willing to put up the capital. Well, the interest is not that high if they aren't willing to put in the capital, or you just don't want a team. I mean, which one is it? You can't come here and say, wow, there's a lot of interest, but nobody was putting up enough money. Money is a representation of interest. High interest, lots of money coming your way. Low interest, no one's going to meet you at your expectation unless you don't want a deal and you just want it to die. Right? And honestly, it's probably good whoever was putting their cash there. It's like the black hole of money pit of New Zealand Rugby Union and Super Rugby. Not a fan.
We're really thankful for the engagement from NFAT and Minister Peters as part of that process, which came towards the end of that proposal process. However, with our committed timeframes, with a hard stop required as of today to launch the competition and stage the competition for next year, no confirmed capital has arrived at this stage. So we're left in no real position other than to announce that there will be no continuation of the licence for MP for the remainder for 2027.
Look at that.
We do want to reiterate
this guy's not has zero confidence
to Pacifica Rugby.
This guy was forced to step out here and say this.
Completely open to
CEO, COO were like, let's send the bean counter. Let's send the bean counter to go out there. Yahweh. All right. Talangi says, thank you. Paid member of the Polynesian Eyes podcast says they should start playing American football. They'll probably have more chance in the NFL for the guys putting in the work for our entertainment. I see 424 over here. If I got talanoa that American football is safer than rugby. I played both, college, high school. The football is more dangerous than rugby. I'll tell you right now. Okay, football will mess you up, your mind and your body, much faster than playing rugby. Right? This is why the NFL guys their bodies are torn up, man. Their bodies are torn up. Rugby guys, yeah, they survive, but it's because in rugby you have a healthy respect to your limits, right? Without the pads, F2, FO, or whatever your name is. And you're saying that, oh, we got all the helmet and the gear and the thigh pads in football makes us safe. It's like, no, dude. It gives you a false sense of security. So you go out on the football field and guys are absolutely reckless. Throwing their technique, because you think you're safe, you don't rely on technique as much, and you're just going at 100 miles an hour and you're just throwing your body. And instead of proper take. In rugby, you don't have pads, so you're kind of relying on technique a little bit more. and not being overly aggressive. You approach, you use your shoulders. In football, we're using the face mask. I mean, we were taught, it's changed it a little bit because of the concussions. When I played football, they said you stick your face in their chest, right? Your face mask right in the chest. Hitting with your head, your face right in front is. So where do you think the majority of that force is going? It's like right on your face, your head, your neck. Rugby, we use our shoulders and so forth. So, yeah. Anyways, coming back to Talangi's comment here, they have, especially if you're a big dude, just look at Jordan Mailata. You just look at that other Tongan kid that they signed. You're a big dude. You try and find that pathway to the NFL, right? And you have to have those off the charts measurables. But Jordan Mailata has shown that Polynesians can show up. They're willing. They have the size. They have the speed. They have the strength. Right now, we typically have the kind of like the character and the willingness to learn and to be taught. Hopefully that maintains itself because it is a big part of our culture. But yeah, 100% agreed there, Talang. Let's see here. Let's come back to Mr. Squidward. Is that who he reminds me of? Squidward's always squiggling around on SpongeBob SquarePants. Is that what this guy is?
Potential or future bids are related to a Pacifica
team. Look at that. He doesn't sound confident.
Beyond 27. However, just to be very clear, there's not a viable option for a team to be stood up to 2027. So I'll take questions from there.
When you say no capital, so are you suggesting this bid had no capital raised behind it?
In terms for our time frame, there was no confirmation of capital received or dedicated confirmed capital in relation to the team to be stood up for 27.
Was there any money confirmed?
But we did not have any confirmed money other than some support from partners from a commercial arrangement for one of the bids. But from a significant capital perspective to meet the requirements, there was no confirmed capital in that regard.
We'll probably end it here because Winston Peters has some thoughts on this, and we're big fans of Winston Peters. So let me get this straight. You have 51% ownership of Moana Pacifica, and you have the license. So you're the majority owner, you're the issuer of the license, and you have total control, and you want someone else to come in and put their capital in there while being 100% subject to you as an owner and then to you as an issuer of the license. Do you see why maybe someone is hesitant to give you that capital? Right? That's what I'm saying, man. Mr. CFO, go back and figure out why you guys can't be successful off the charts like the NRL in a rugby country.
Is that because the Tongan and Samoan governments and New Zealand government wanted more time?
I can't speak for them exclusively, but I'm aware time is definitely a constraint. And as I said, this process has in essence been running for
and the time is self-imposed.
Quite a long time. And those requests for that time perhaps were happened quite late in that process. To be clear, NZR was not part of requesting capital from the governments. That was from the bids themselves. So I can't speak on their behalf on that.
The deadline has been shifted.
Correct.
Several times.
Yes. So the original deadline was the 15th of May. We shifted that multiple times, especially with light of potential support from MFAT and Mr. Peters to try and give that as much time as possible. However, we have a hard stop in relation to the competition. We need to support the current teams, sponsors, booking venues, timetable scheduling. We're at a hard stop, unfortunately, to stand up that competition for next year with our partners in Super Rugby Pacific.
So the deadline was moved. Some might suggest the goalposts have been moved as well. Did you keep asking for higher levels of capital?
No, that depends on the quality of the business plan presented.
So you did move when somebody said, you first said, "Hey, it's $5 million," Somebody came and said, "Yeah, I got 5 million bucks." Oh, I don't like your business plan. It's now 10 million bucks. How do you tell someone you're not interested in keeping the franchise alive without telling them you're not interested in keeping the franchise alive? By doing exactly that. Is it capital or is it the business plan? They said they didn't get capital. When someone met them at the capital, then all of a sudden the business plan wasn't good enough. Coming from the people who don't know what a good business plan is because they haven't figured out how to keep Super Rugby profitable, let alone a franchise that is smaller with a smaller footprint and a expansion franchise like the Moana Pacifica that's hard on its own. See, that's what I'm saying. These guys, from what I'm hearing, they didn't want a team. They can say what they want, but maybe they're bleeding money in other areas and they just saw Moana Pacifica as dead weight. Because when someone met them at their capital, all of a sudden they saw the business plan wasn't strong enough. If you got enough capital to launch next year, you launch next year. It's kind of silly.
For sure, at NZ Rugby, we've done our due diligence on that business plan and made our assessment on what capital should be required for that. That sensitivity should be performed by all parties. We performed our sensitivity, which was a fair and reasonable sensitivity of what's required capital for a team to be stood up.
Had that increased recently?
Well, our assessment on sensitivity suggests that more capital is required than that assessment from the parties included. And it was disappointing that those parties didn't do that sensitivity analysis. Pretty standard business approach to
no, it is not.
Scenario.
This guy should not be talking about standard business practices and that they understand what a successful business plan looks like in investment when they're not successful in what they're doing. Okay. From all I can see from outside, Super Rugby is just trying to stay alive. They're not thriving. They're trying to stay alive. They ain't the NRL. Go, Mr. CFO, don't even come to America. Go to the NRL and figure that out. Go to the Aussie rules, whatever they're doing, the Aussie rules in Australia, they seem to be thriving. And like I said, I think I know it's because you guys think this is what I grew up. I was an All Blacks fan. And, especially through the early days of Jonah Lomu, I remember when George Gregan scored at the very end and beat the All Blacks. That was the last time I was like really disappointed on the All Blacks loss. But once I see how they're this behavior right here and how they're moving the goalposts. There is no, hey, if you come in with $5 million, this will give the team a runway for 1 or 2 seasons. We can work through it, right? Nah, these guys are like, oh, $5 million. Oh, you meet us at $5 million. Oh, well, actually, for you, it's $15 million. People are like, what are you talking about? Sounds to me like you don't know what you need to run a team for a few years, and therefore you don't know what that price is, right? I don't know if he knows that he's like really revealing how idiotic it is. But anyways, my point is this same thinking is what made me not an All Blacks fan, because that's how they treated Samoan, Tongan, and Fijian players, right? They treated them that way. They used them as disposable and use the rules to their advantage. Okay, great. You use the rules to your advantage, but don't come and tell me you're pro Pacifica. When I growing up as a kid in Tonga, I was like, man, Peter Tuipulotu and some of these other guys, they're going to be great. They're going to be great All Blacks for the World Cup. You bring them up a year or two before the World Cup just to drop them so that they couldn't go play for Tonga, Samoa, or Fiji. And then you're going to come and tell me you're about building Pacifica rugby. This is baloney, right? Moving the goalposts, manipulating the rules in bad faith, really just to save their own necks. and then have the audacity to say, yeah, there's a lot of interest and we care about Moana Pacifica and blah, 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 blah. Like, no,
on your modelling. So it's entirely reasonable that capital requirements were in excess of the original view.
So given the lack of capital, did it actually become quite a straightforward decision in the end?
Yeah, in the end, it's actually a really, well, it's not never a straightforward decision in relation to a team. We have all intent purposes to try and stand this team up for the long term. And as I said before, we remain really open for establishing a team on the right sound commercial footing and standing for the long term. The time constraints just meant that the ability to stand up a team, in essence, a less than 2-month window with established capital, a viable commercial plan, lined up sponsors to support that business case, meant that it made it very difficult to grant a license to a team that didn't have that capital in place.
Had that bar been raised this week? Did an ultimatum be issued?
Well, in the end, it's up to the parties with the bid to come up with the credible and sustainable capital for a bid.
And they hadn't done that?
No, we've not seen that capital.
No, it's up to you guys. Okay, this is what we call leadership. This is what we call taking responsibility. It's up to you to say, here's the cash we need. Here's the commitments we need to make this work. Not, here's the cash, here's the commitment. Someone meets you at the cash and the commitment. And then you say, oh, actually for you, it's this and that. No, man. You don't know what you need. This is why it's probably a good thing. Whoever met them at the cash earlier, you dodged a bullet with these guys. You dodged a bullet with these guys.
But in essence, any business or any bid, you should be doing a sound commercial analysis of your risk to your bid. And our analysis of that would suggest that more capital would be required than was initially proposed.
Could you say how many bids were serious?
I'd say there are 4 serious bids, but in terms of standing up bids for 2027, it was left down to one real bid opportunity for 27. And that was the bid we're working with, with MFAT and partners to try and get over the line. But as I said, as of today, there's been no confirmed capital in relation to that bid.
You're the finance person as such, but we have to ask, what about the players, the staff? There's a number of players who I guess have got nothing for next year. And
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, our thoughts have always been with the players. We stepped in with the current Moana Pacifica situation and have directly funded the team through to the end of July to support the players through that process. That was us directly funding a private enterprise.
You did that to save yourself from the embarrassment of having a team fall flat and maintain the schedule. Don't come like, oh, we really cared about the players. If you cared about the players, you would have took the cash on the first cash level that you said was necessary to fund it for the next year.
Which wasn't able to meet its obligations. So from an NZ Rugby perspective, our thoughts have always been with the players and looking after them as best we can. We also have to take into account the wider stakeholders of NZ Rugby. We don't have an empty checkbook. We've got a provincial union, a community to support. We have the game to support, and we don't have an open checkbook to support a private enterprise or private teams.
just confirming that support will end at the end of July.
From an NZR perspective, yes, we're not going any further than that.
You said some of those bids were keen to take a team into a new market. Can you sort of give me insight into those new markets?
I think some of that might have been reported in the past, but there is obviously the core markets of Samoa and Tonga, and the license
not big enough. Not big enough.
Is directly associated with Samoa and Tonga, so hence why this process was the extension of the current license. In future, for a future team, as I said, we remain pretty excited with the amount of bid interest and potential options for a team that could be somewhere within the Pacific Rim. So I won't comment on those specifically for now, but and we remain committed working with MFAT and other parties to supporting rugby in the Pacific and potential teams in the future in line with Rugby Australia and competition.
Adi Sabia was due to come back to Moana Pacifica. Where does he sit now?
Adi is a NZ Rugby contracted player. So he will be back into a New Zealand Super Rugby team. It's up to Adia, I guess, and his team to work out where that is. But Adia remains, obviously, for next year, an NZ Rugby contracted player.
Have you spoken to, or how much conversation has there been with Australia about this team? I mean, I know they may say, well, it's not our problem.
No, to be fair, Australia really let us run the process because it is our license really in terms of grant as part of the Super Rugby agreement. So they have really, we're just getting them informed of the process as we've moved along. And they've supported us in terms of us making the right decision for NZ Rugby, for Pacific Rugby in the community.
Was a decision made some time ago that it would be better for everyone, in inverted commas, to have 10 teams rather than 11?
No.
Would Rugby Australia not support 10 teams instead of?
No, this decision was a decision made for NZ Rugby for the competition, purely on back to those key aspects of a viable team with a financially viable business plan and committed capital, which was not there. So that led to the decision. There was no pressure from Rugby Australia for us to make that decision.
But it's competition want to get back to 11 or...
Oh, I'm sure.
Not very
for
convincing.
sure for the competition, future expansion is attractive and is a key part for growing the competition and commercial value of that competition. But for 2027, that won't be the case.
And it could be a while if we see a team from Tonga Samoa back.
Look, I can't put a time frame on it, but if you really step back in essence and look, we want a strong Pacific connection and a long-term viable.
Let me translate that. We want to maintain the talent pipeline from the Polynesian, Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, but we don't want to have to do the hard work to figure out a way to make it viable, right? Like, it's more important we just maintain that talent pipeline, not really that important to make sure that there's a viable option for those athletes to be independent.
Long-term viable team based in the Pacific, creating pathways and talent pathways and economic value in the Pacific. To rush forward and establish a team within 4 weeks that in quite essence has considerable cash burn, was not likely to be profitable over a 4-year period at all. It's not the right solution when we want to establish a team, as I say, for perpetuity. So
the Moana Working Party, sure they did everything that was asked of them? Would you dispute?
Oh, well, in the end, we did not have any committed capital. That was the fundamental requirement, and we have not had any committed capital as of today still from that process. So,
but you said you changed the goalpost.
Hard work from that team, and we worked proactively and significantly with that team and other parties to try and get this over the line. But in the absence of confirmed capital, we cannot take that risk in the competition. And to take this forward,
these guys didn't want Moana
until
Pacifica there.
that capital is committed. We have to, as I said, we have a competition that has to get finalised, and certainty for our sponsors, for broadcast, for a whole lot of reasons why we need to get that completed. And unfortunately, without that capital, you've got to draw a line in the sand at some point to move forward.
Negative message to the young Pacific players out there, do you feel?
No, I think we could have stand back and go, there's actually a lot of positive opportunities. Within New Zealand Rugby, we're really committed to Pacifica. From a governance perspective, we've got two board members. The Pacifica Council just been admitted as a electing council into rugby, sort of with 2 votes, and we do significant work in the Pacifica community for the game. And we remain committed to a future opportunity in Pacifica Rugby, but one that will also develop credibly in a business plan and a financial pathway to create long-term pathways and success in the Pacific itself, not playing games within New Zealand.
Based on the numbers you've seen and the modelling you've seen, are you confident that something could be stacked up for 2028?
There was actually a number of bids, and to be honest, you could take parts of all of them and put it together and come up with, over time, a compelling case. And I think that's how we have to look at this going forward. So there is a commercial model there, but of particular interest would be a partnership with government and private. That would be ideal.
That's probably the best thing he said.
While supportive can never be guaranteed forever. So you really want a mixture of government and private ownership or support into a team.
Especially for Tonga and Samoan
teams. Of support that can last longer than a cycle, that's for sure.
NZR had to help bail out the Hurricanes last year. Are any other teams in strife?
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
They will run at losses though, some of them?
I haven't got the final outcome of that.
Homeboy just spent, 13 minutes talking about you have to put together a good business case. You got to understand the numbers. You got to understand all these things. And then he can't even say whether, well, we know it sounds like the Hurricanes had to be bailed out, right? A year or two ago. Now they're the champs. Did the Hurricanes win? Yeah, I think the Hurricanes won. So they had to be bailed out, and now they're champs. And he can't even say, yeah, our teams are profitable. Do you know if the commissioner from the NFL were to say something like that, everybody like, oh, yeah, they're losing money. And that's exactly, I mean, I think I've had enough of this guy and this kind of his discussion there. It's just the reality is they're losing money. Even their established brands are losing money and have to be bailed out. Yet they want to say, we know how to analyze what capital is needed, what a viable business plan is, when the All Blacks sometimes are going to go bankrupt, and New Zealand Rugby Union is going to go bankrupt every once in a while. Yeah, not buying it. You know, this guy is doing his best. Maybe they sent him out there because they're like CEO and the COO are like, yeah, send the CFO out there because we want this to be a financial decision. When in reality, we just don't want a Pacifica team, right? 11, odd number, not a large market, not going to get a lot of viewing rights, television rights out of them, even though they probably had some of the more exciting crowds in joining in there and really have the audacity to say, well, we really care about Pacifica. Nah, you don't. Like, freaking don't pee on my leg and then tell me it's raining. And then the audacity to, right after he says, we know what a viable business plan looks like, and we know what capital is needed to run a team, and then some of your largest franchise had to be bailed out, and you cannot confidently say all of our teams are making money. Yeah, I think that's going to be a hard pass. I hope whoever is thinking about it, hey, if you got lots of cash and you just want to burn it, you just like owning a team, you're a billionaire and you just got a ton of money for the love of the game, yeah, go buy a New Zealand franchise, But remember, this is the people you're dealing with. These are the people that are deciding whether you can be a part of the organization. Oh, and by the way, they're the controlling owner of the organization, and they make up all the rules on how the game's played and what's going to happen. Yeah, I wouldn't say I would be excited about owning a franchise in that competition. So, with that being said, what we're going to end the night is some, reactions to some of, with the FIFA World Cup going on in the US. A lot of people are coming to America for the first time, and they're in Europe, quote unquote, first world countries. And I visited a bunch of countries in Europe and I was thoroughly unimpressed. It's cool history, like the old buildings. Cars are small. Everything's expensive. Gas, a lot of places I was at didn't have air conditioning. A lot of things like that we just take for granted here in America. You go to a place, restaurant, you don't get refills. Just a lot of things. You go to a gas station, you got to pay to use the restroom. A lot of things that we take for granted, but it's, people came to America. There's a reason why America is number one. So we'll kind of end the show here, kind of watch some of the social media posts that people have brought online. Let me bring this up.
This is so big.
Slow down.
The World Cup is finally in America, which means thousands of Europeans are currently touching down and having absolute existential crises over our daily lives.
There's another bench, and it's not vandalized and broken and destroyed. If that was South Africa, gosh,
I've
first of all, I
seen a
wouldn't be able to
handful
walk
of
through
videos with
blooming
this
park
guy
by myself,
reacting
holding
to
a pair of glasses and a cell phone. We all know that. But then you get here, and you're completely safe. Completely safe. I mean, like I say, there's women everywhere walking completely alone. There is people walking everywhere. There are women walking alone with fancy handbags, jewelry on, glasses on. They're not being harassed, nothing. Then right here, you've got a park, clean and tidy.
Wait till they find out how much money we spend on high school sports.
There's honestly no way that this is normal. Look at this. Like, this is a high school stadium. What?
What's funny is that's a decent one. You go to Texas, $100 million stadiums, right? It would make a Mr. Super Rugby over there. He would die to have some of the high school stadiums that Texas high school have for a Super Rugby.
Look at the amount of seats in this place.
So I've been to Walmart already, and it's huge. But what is this?
Costco.
Costco. This is even bigger than Walmart. I'm way too European for this. I'm not able to understand. That's huge. Why is it so big?
Refill
I can
soda.
refill this 1,000 times.
Yeah, but you won't drink 1,000 cups of
You don't know me. And it's free.
You paid for it. You paid it.
Once.
Bro, slow down.
Slow down. Yes, please. Thank you. I'm in paradise.
Fans from South Korea, they were down in Guadalajara turning up with Mexico. Like, I think that's really the best videos.
So that's in Mexico, not the U.S. So let's stay in the
Europeans
U.S.
to come visit us and just do like stream of consciousness blogs of visiting like the South.
I had this as well, yes.
And it makes even people that live in America be like, yeah, you know what? Our country's not so bad.
America, you deserve and are owed an apology. And I'm going to say sorry on behalf of all the countries outside America and their media and the narrative they paint about America. Hundreds and thousands of fans for the World Cup are now seeing America through their own eyes, realizing the narrative they've been fed is false. And they're now realizing America is not the place that they thought it was. And I am sorry.
That's crazy.
the
I didn't
media in
realize
these countries
how much
outside of
negative
America
coverage
paints you
America
the way
gets.
they do. America is rich in culture, scenery, the people are amazing. And the media in the countries outside of America paint this weird narrative that it's a place that you shouldn't go. But now the tides are changing. There is a shift that is happening. And I'm sorry you've been painted in this light for so long. And I'm so happy America is finally receiving the flowers that it deserves. We've all seen the videos of the Europeans experiencing America for what it truly is, and it's amazing. When I first landed in America all those years ago, I came with an open mind. I saw it through my own eyes, and it's exactly what is happening right now with all the traveling fans for the World Cup and the foreigners. They are seeing America through their own eyes, and they're realizing how amazing it actually is.
It's ground beef. I mean, look at the size of it. Look at and I got big hands. Damn. The bread. But there is no real bread. How many ingredients? Oh my God. And don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on you, but I think most of these things would be so illegal in Europe.
Container store.
It's just containers.
Just containers, what, to contain stuff?
Yeah.
But what if you want a soft mattress or a medium mattress? I'm not sure.
Only firm.
And then, of course, We sent them to our local gas stations.
We did a Buc-ee's.
Banana pudding in a cup.
Talked about Buc-ee's before from Texas.
Yeah,
My favorite gas station in the world.
This is like a gas station that let the intrusive thoughts win.
Everything's Bucky's own brand.
And it's all good.
Pickled eggs. Just in a
I didn't
jar.
get the pickled
I'm
eggs.
genuinely overwhelmed.
If it's
Do
a
you want
Buc-ee's
sample?
brand,
That's a
it's
lot of
probably
fragile.
good.
In the UK, McDonald's is quite high up on the totem pole of fast food chains. I came to America and I assumed the
That's
same.
at the bottom.
Turns out I think it's a little bit lower on the totem pole, and the quality and taste is completely different. Like McDonald's, honestly, like fries taste nothing like the fries in the UK at McDonald's.
You know what's funny? When I was in England, went to the McDonald's drive-thru and I tried to ask for ranch. They had no idea what ranch was. So I asked them, so what do you guys have? They said ketchup. And then they said sweet curry sauce. That's when I knew, oh man, England has a lot of Indians there, because how else do you come up with sweet curry sauce as a dipping for your fries?
We're back to Boston, got in a cab, went to the airport to go home, and I thought, I'm not going home, I'm staying. So I get back out the taxi, I got another taxi straight back into Boston to come here to watch this game. The Boston people are amazing. It's the best city I've ever been in my life, bar none. It's incredible. The people, this is why I stayed, because you guys are just amazing.
Can you hear it? It's the cicadas. The cicadas when they make that noise, that I just love it.
Those are the bucks. You hear them a lot in Texas.
Is this for real? What kind of storm should I be expecting here?
That's a
I don't know
tornado,
if the
buddy.
Army are ready for this with all our kilts and all the rest of it.
He was like, he saw a flat sign that said, watch for severe weather. And there's like a picture of a tornado on it. And he's like, is this real? Excuse me, sir. The movie Twisters wasn't fiction. That shit was a documentary. Like,
we're heading down to Miami. We started the day with a walk to Walmart. We literally only went in for something for breakfast and ended up spending $80 on toiletries. Also saw this weird animal. I've got absolutely no idea what it is.
And of course, everywhere, American flags. I wish we would have the same in
Patriotism.
Switzerland, where you could see all the Swiss flags. No, that's a good thing. United States flags. I like this. I just took a walk all the way down there.
It's back to this guy again.
Midnight. It's freaking midnight.
Anyways.
And I'm completely...
The point is, just like the narratives that we hear about tattoos, the narratives we hear about Tawalunga, right? Just because you're told something and you hear it a lot doesn't always mean it's true or accurate. Hey, UTOL, pay member of the Polynesian Ice Podcast, says Malo Toko. Hey, appreciate it, UTOL. Appreciate the support, Malo Opito. So, once again, you have all these Europeans, these people outside of the US. They get the media, the coverage. Oh, America is terrible. You know, the people are rude. It's dangerous. You know, it's just terrible. It's a terrible place to be. That's the same like hearing a lot of these narratives of our Polynesian history, different parts of our culture, how we navigated through European contact. And we just assume that just because we heard it often, over and over and over through the years, that is the truth. That doesn't mean it's the truth. And you got to come in, think for yourself, listen to different ideas, see what makes sense, and then explore, right? And come to your own conclusions. That's what we do here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. This is what we do on live digital kava sessions. We bring ideas, we bring evidence, bring logic, bring whatever you can bring to the table, throw it out there. Let's have a discussion and really just explore what the evidence is, what the possibilities are, and then everyone makes up their own decision on what they think is the truth and what makes sense to them. With that being said, we really appreciate everyone's joined us. Appreciate all our paid members on the Polynesianized podcast. Appreciate all the support. As always, one of the simplest things you can do to support us is a like, a share, a comment. Goes a very long way. A subscription, and we'll close it out with what we always say: be bold. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, and always, always stay curious. Till next time, peace.